Welcome to Norse Code, the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host and producer. My name is James Pagoshnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from theathletic.com. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, is there a professional sports commissioner that you would feel okay with having a picture of them in your bedroom?
You asked me off the top of my head, and I gotta say, haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it. My knee-jerk response is no, but I'm happy to be proven wrong. I don't know how happy I'd be if I was proven wrong, but
it's a weird thing, and we'll get into it in just a moment. But I'm currently staring at a picture of Roger Goodell staring at me, and I'm not okay with this.
The way you phrased that made it seem like the picture was of Roger Goodell staring at you. Like Roger Goodell was staring at you, someone took that photo, now that photo is in your room, and now you're staring at him staring at you in the photo.
My worry is if I say his name 3 times in the mirror, he's going to appear. So
that definitely happens, actually. That's a real concern.
So stick around in a second. We got an important announcement involving this.
Related to that, by the way. Yeah.
Yes, much related to this.
The crazy, you are absolutely going to want to hear it, is the dumbest part about all of this.
We teased it last episode, but welcome to this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys are all doing well. It is the off season. There's not a lot of news, but we're going to try to muddle through this as best as we can. Apologies, we were going to have an episode last week, but I ended up getting stuck on a boat. And then the internet was a terrible place. So we decided that we were going to wait a couple of days, do it on the normal Tuesday night, Wednesday morning recording. So hope you guys are all doing well. And we've got a couple things to talk about. There's a little bit going on at camp. There's a few things that have happened as far as people signing, people going. A couple rumors worth mentioning. Aaron Rodgers is apparently dating a witch. That's in our wheelhouse for some reason, so we'll talk about that.
It 100% is.
And then, wait, 100% in our wheelhouse or 100%?
Yes.
Okay, well, just wanted to double check as far as the baby witches were concerned. And we have a mailbag as well. But before we start, I want to thank you guys for listening to Norse Code. If you enjoy the show and would like to donate to the show, you can do so in a couple of different ways, and here's the important one. Patreon.com/Norse Code is the best way to get bonus material, which we'll be putting out here shortly. It's the best way to get access to the Discord, and it's the best way to get into the raffle for I swear to God, this is true, a signed and framed Laquon Treadwell rookie jersey.
It's in, what do they call them, shadow boxes?
It's in a shadow box. It is framed. It is signed. It says Skol Vikes. In it, we'll post a picture of this, but there's a picture of Roger Goodell and Laquon Treadwell from the draft on one side, and then the other side is a picture of him at training camp actually catching a ball. So
this shadow box is, first of all, rare picture. Second, this shadow box is mystifyingly enormous.
It is massive. This belongs on the wall of a sports bar. The details on how this was acquired are kind of sketchy, but I acquired it via trade for a bottle of whiskey. So you know that this has to be a quality product. This is, in fact, this is signed. This is pristine, and we're announcing this giveaway on Laquon Treadwell's birthday by accident.
Yeah, so James rolls up to the podcast. He's like, Arif, check this out. This will be how we riff on this is in the Patreon exclusive stuff. But we riff on this hilarity for a while. James explains the story. We talk about the likelihood that this is a game-worn jersey because, to quote James, it is completely clean.
It's perfectly clean. Like, you could argue
every chance it was game-worn.
From his rookie year, he wasn't doing a damn thing. So yeah, it's possible. It's from the Week 2 game against Green Bay. We don't know.
Because of this, it 100% has to be from the Week 2 game against Green Bay. He played 2 snaps. Both of them were on offense. I believe he ran 0 routes, which means he earned 0 targets, which means 0 receptions and 0 yards. His yards per reception is divided by 0. No, yeah. So we talk about that a little bit, and then I just happened to look like to scroll up in the Pro Football Reference page, and it's his birthday today.
Yeah, so we made a game time decision. We're making this announcement now. If you would like to be in the raffle for the Laquon Treadwell signed and framed jersey,
you know you do,
and you know that you do, sign up over at patreon.com, and here are the rules. You either need to be a current people already qualify for this as long as they stay until week 1 of the NFL season. But if you sign up for Patreon and do the $3.50 a month until the first week of the season, which is when I will hold the drawing for this, you will qualify for it. Also, if you, at any point in time between now and middle of September when week 1 happens, sign up for us on Patreon and do the year of subscription, you will immediately qualify. It doesn't matter what day you do it between now and September. So
it is essentially any active patrons who have subscribed for at least 3 months or are active on a year-long Patreon subscription plan. All of those people are eligible after week 1's game to win this phenomenal Laquon Treadwell signed jersey.
Phenomenal, potentially game-worn
Laquon Treadwell jersey, which is signed, by the way, which everyone knows increases its value, especially for such a rare item like this. Yeah, so any current patrons that are still patrons after week 1, you're already eligible. Great news. Any new patrons should sign up sooner rather than later so that by the time week 1 rolls around, you will have been a patron for 3 months.
Yes.
Or just do the whole year.
So here's how it's going to work. So you sign up on Patreon, and if you go with the $3.50 a month, that will get you 1 entry into the lottery for the jersey. However, if you end up signing up with the year-long subscription, that will give you 2 entries for this for the drawing. So again, the monthly rate is for $3.50 a month. That will get you access for 1 entry for this raffle. If you go with the yearly, that will get you 2 entries. So keep that in mind when you're signing up. So for right now, if you're interested, $3.50 a month over at patreon.com/Norse Code. Again, that'll get you 1 entry. If you do the year long, that will get you 2. If you are currently somebody who is on $3.50 and transfer over to the yearly, so that'll get you access to the 2 entries. This is amazing. I cannot, special thank you goes out to my buddy Sam, who has been in the fantasy leagues for a while. I believe his mom is the one who found this. It is truly remarkable. So we finally figured out what we want to do with it. We're going to be giving it away. So please join us over at patreon.com/Norse Code. This is going to be all over social media. I just put it in the Discord. This is better than the Christian Ponder football.
Which, by the way, access the Discord through our Patreon.
Yes. So check it out. Patreon.com/Norse Code. These people, if they stay on through the week 1, are already qualified for the drawing. Charismatic Hot Dog. Thank you, Charismatic Hot Dog. Trevor Grimm, thank you so much. And Chris Tarr, thank you for updating your pledge. You qualify for the signed Laquon Treadwell jersey. That sentence is so dumb. I love it so much. The next logical thing we have to find is like a signed Josh Freeman jersey, right? Like,
oh my God, that would rule so hard.
That's the next logical. Like, if we can get him and Eli to sign it,
yeah,
from the greatest game ever, that would be fantastic.
I think the best piece of Norse Code merch, which honestly I don't know that we would even give away, it would be too valuable, is the game worn jersey from Monday night. I would want that so much.
That would have to be a personal collection. That's all that would end up being. So
that would go like, well, James probably would have it, but if I had it in my place, it would be behind me at the so you could see every time my webcam turns on for a video podcast, which we don't do. Who knows? Maybe we'll do it in the future. Probably not. A video podcast with somebody else, or just when I'm in an office Zoom meeting, and there's
it becomes the Eric wine bottle. Like whenever Eric Thompson is on a call, he has the JMU NDSU bottle in his background. It would basically be that. Arif, why do you have a is that signed? Why do you have a Josh Freeman Vikings jersey?
It's dirty. No, don't tell me that's game worn. Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy.
That somebody needs to reach out to his representation. That's what we need to acquire. Also, we want to say a special thanks to Eli, who sent us a PayPal donation. And why a PayPal donation? Because, quote, we want Quasi on the show. We had made a comment that if you donate to the show an indeterminate amount of money, that Arif is going to try to get Quasi on the show. So the movement has begun.
A baldly unaccountable promise, like just from step one.
Yep.
And Eli was still like, "Hey, chance is better than no chance. Let's go.
Here's a couple bucks. Make this. Let's just see if we can make this a thing." Thank you, Eli. Also, just as an aside, if you do want to just donate via PayPal and not via Patreon, you can. You're not getting the benefits as easily through there, but a donation of $37.81, which is the equivalent of 1 year on Patreon, will get you into the running for it. Just for the record, if you're more comfortable doing that. But the Treadwell jersey, Roger Goodell is staring at me, and I am not okay. This is.
Yeah, James is unsettled, but you still want it, actually. Anybody listening to this, you still want it.
I can only imagine that when this was, like, this screams won at an auction somewhere. Like, it screams that to me. But if it wasn't, this is a situation of a person who went out of their way to get a Laquon Treadwell jersey signed, and then decided, you know what? He was a first round pick. He's guaranteed to be a success. All right, let's do the respectable thing. Let's get a picture of him on draft day. Let's get a picture of him and Goodell in the corner. And you know what? Maybe he even went. Maybe he's such a super fan, the person that put this together, that he went to training camp and got this picture.
That's his picture, yeah,
of him from training camp. Maybe, I don't know if this is a Getty image or not, but it's a fine picture. And then there's a Vikings thing in the middle. Like, this is so over the top. This belongs in your man cave.
Fun. Like they did work.
This love and energy and effort was put into this, glass framed and all. So head over to patreon.com/Norse Code and check this loveliness out. This is about as good as it gets, folks. That is, the ginger is staring into my soul again. All right. Also, you can go to norsecode.threadless.com where you can buy Arif and James merchandise. It just isn't as cool as the Treadwell jersey this week. Sorry, I have to. I'm not knocking.
I mean, we strive for this level of class, but honestly, I don't know that the merch store has it.
I'm not knocking the Arif pillow. I'm not knocking the. Nobody has gone out and bought the shower curtain yet. I do need a shower curtain. Like I probably need a new shower curtain. I'm just not willing to cross that bridge. I'm just
okay. So the question is then: is it weirder if you purchase a shower curtain with the faces of your favorite podcasters on it, or is it weirder if you are one of those podcasters and there's a cartoon picture of you looking at you shower? Which one is weirder?
Well, the way that it's set up, it wouldn't actually be looking at you in the shower. It would be looking at you.
You can set it up however you want.
Well, I mean, you could. Just that's a level of uncomfortable. That's yeah. There are people who can't handle like eyes.
Look, if you buy this is to the listener. If you buy the shower curtain, we won't ask. Do whatever you want, man. We don't want to know. No, actually,
that is 100%. We do not want to know. All right.
Yeah, that's a James and Arif guarantee. Don't tell us.
In fact, if you do, we will tell you. That's great. We didn't want to know that. All right, let's get into the show. Now that we have discussed the Laquon Treadwell jersey to death, let's get into the show. There's been a couple of people who've been signed, a couple of people who've been let go. What's been going on the last couple of weeks with the Vikings?
Yeah, so the Vikings have made just a couple of transactions. The most recent of which is to sign former Broncos edge defender Andre Mintz, who Daniel House thought looked really good in the Vikings joint practices against the Broncos last year. So kind of good call for him. And they waived kicker Gabe Brkic, who's the Oklahoma kicker that was challenging Greg Joseph in camp. That's basically one transaction by itself, although they technically occurred 3 days apart. The announcement that they were signing Andre Mintz occurred at the same time. So there's that. They also prior had waived injured Kenny Willekes, the edge defender. Always a little bit undersized. Always, people always question his athleticism, and fair enough, he didn't test super well, but he always took exception to that. And he's been a bit of a fan favorite for a little bit, but it's been difficult for him to remain healthy. And they signed defensive lineman Jonathan Bullard, who was, I believe, an edge defender at Florida, but for the Chicago Bears was primarily kind of a 3-tech, kind of a 3-4 defensive end. I assume he's going to play the same role with the Vikings. So you did not get an edge defender for for an edge defender. You got an edge defender for what would in the previous system have been a defensive tackle. But the Vikings did get an edge defender eventually, and Andre Mincy. And then the day before that is when they signed Albert Wilson, the former Miami Dolphins, and he was somewhere before the Miami Dolphins, Kansas City Chiefs, I think, receiver, and they waived running back AJ Rose. Of course, both AJ Rose and Gabe Brkic made my initial 53-man roster. Actually, no, AJ Rose didn't. Gabe Brkic did, but AJ Rose made a list of players to watch for in training camp. So the Vikings are reading my articles and are targeting me specifically.
Clearly.
Yep.
So otherwise, it's pretty nice and quiet in it's pretty nice and quiet in Egan then right now.
Yeah, I mean the highest profile addition was Albert Wilson. So there's nothing. I mean, like I could see Andre Mintz and Jonathan Bullard making an impact and making the team, but they clearly are not. Like there's nothing high profile. It's been pretty quiet. The Vikings did use this opportunity to reshuffle and promote some members of their front office staff. So as soon as minicamp kicked off or ended, they announced, kind of the new front office positions and stuff. I don't know kind of if anyone was let go. I didn't, dig too deeply, but this is about the time that happened. So the Vikings did not retain the same structure that they had before. I know that was a question that people had when Kwesi Adofo-Mensah was hired. They maintained that structure through the draft and through the early part of the offseason program, and then shuffled it after that, which is generally when this happens because they want to be able to use all the work that that team had done in the lead up to the draft.
Has anything been announced as far as dates for training camp?
No, dates for training camp have not been announced yet.
Yeah, I know that there was a question about that as far as training camp dates and all that, and there was an announcement as well as far as the games happening for the preseason this year. Obviously, there's 3 of them now, and one of them in Minnesota, but the NFL Network is going to be airing a surprising number of them this year for all teams. But it looks like the NFL Network is going to be airing 2 of them now for the Vikings this year. Which
two out of their 3. Which you're right. That's kind of interesting. I probably because it's a new coach, right? They're doing the week 1 against the Raiders, which is Sunday, August 14th, and then they're doing the final week, so week 3, against the Broncos, which of course, Ed Donatel gets to return to Mile High Stadium.
Yep, clearly that's a revenge game for him. That's
right. Yeah.
That's just there's not a lot of Vikings news at the moment, so apologies, but the bottom of the barrel is being scraped really hard right now. But we're trying. So
Right.
we've got all that. That's basically the Vikings news for the day. We've got some mailbag stuff we'll talk about here in just a moment. But before we get to that, the other quasi Viking news out of the past couple of weeks involved the Baker Mayfield rumor about potentially making it onto, or about potentially being traded to the Vikings. And while on paper you may say, that doesn't make any sense, why would you do such a thing? And you'd be absolutely right. But if the Vikings were to find some way of pulling this off, how would they do it? And where would they put Kirk after next year?
I mean, it would be to make, Baker Mayfield a backup quarterback, which he is a better quarterback than backup quarterbacks tend to be. And I would imagine that he's better than Kellen Mond. And certainly he's better than Sean Mannion, who certainly right now seems like he's better than Kellen Mond too. So transitively, Baker Mayfield will be an upgrade of the backup quarterback position, but it's a lot of resources to invest. I don't know if the Vikings even have enough room for that. I didn't really check. This was like an idea that Dan Graziano at ESPN just kind of had. He just kind of posted it as like, kind of a place, right? It's like he wrote, the Vikings are set the season with Kirk Cousins, but could move on from him after this year. This is an example of a place where Mayfield or Jimmy Garoppolo wouldn't start right away, but could position himself as the team starter in 2023, the way that Jameis did with the Saints in 2020. So like if you take out like the finances and the trade capital that the Vikings have, to acquire someone like Mayfield, who again, I mean, obviously the Browns, have made their thoughts pretty clear on whether or not they want Baker Mayfield in the building. I don't know that, the Browns would part ways with him cheaply just because he is a quarterback, and teams are going to want to, if the teams would have to pay up to get him, and he's better than backup quarterbacks. The problem, of course, is that he is, I believe, going to earn a $19 million cap hit this year. So I just don't see how the Vikings could shoulder that. This was just a trade proposal in an article. Like the article was just, where do Baker Mayfield and Jimmy Garoppolo go next? It wasn't like reporting, right? It was just like, he also said that could be possible elsewhere, including the Buccaneers, Eagles, Cardinals, Titans, and Raiders. So I don't know why this ended up kind of traveling through the Vikings Twitter sphere, and through the blogosphere, which I've been a blogger longer than I've been a journalist, right? Which if you believe that there's a distinction between those two things, which for me, honestly, there hasn't been, is the same stuff for me. But I've been identified as a blogger much longer than I've been so I get it, right? And if I was still at the Daily Norseman or Vikings territory or whatever, I might have written about this, but I kind of doubt it because it's not even a rumor. It's not like a thing that someone reported that the Vikings are exploring. They're just like, hey, the Vikings kind of fit here. And again, from a trajectory standpoint, it makes sense, right? That Baker Mayfield could establish himself in a new environment, but he's not pressured to start right away. The Vikings can evaluate him basically for free, in terms of roster space, because Sean Mannion and Kellen Mond are just not that important, relatively speaking. And make a decision on him as soon as next year, but probably the year after. And then he'd be able to earn a starting spot, which just occasionally that happens. But financially, it doesn't make any sense. The Vikings and they would have to give up a player that they are paying. And if you follow the Vikings offseason moves, the only players that they're paying money right now, a lot of money right now, are players they absolutely want to have in the building, because anybody that wasn't making close to what their value actually is for the Vikings, either had their contract renegotiated or they're just gone, right? The Vikings were very aggressive about making sure that those contracts were in line with what they wanted. And so there's not a lot of arbitrage opportunity to move a contract that's really big that they don't want to have already taken on. So that's the issue, is that I don't know that you can either trade for Baker with the right pieces or get money. But this isn't a thing. They didn't say the Vikings were exploring it. Dan said that, hey man, here's the thing. Like the closest, because he is kind of an insider. The closest is basically, I spoke to a lot of GMs, right? And so he's not saying that like he came up out of this out of nowhere, but he was like, hey, it's impossible to forecast where such a change might occur, but here's a partial list of outside the box suggestions I got when I made my calls. So this is basically just some GM saying, hey, the Vikings kind of make sense, don't they? And that's not any different than, Dan Graziano saying, hey, the Vikings kind of make sense, don't they? Like, that's what this is. So yeah, but like James just said, we're like at a dead time for Vikings news. Minicamp was already kind of dead in terms of news. There wasn't a lot coming out of minicamp that was worth reporting on. And now that we don't even have that, something like, a reporter at ESPN suggesting a potential trade, is going to capture people's attention. Honestly, just go on vacation, man. Don't log into a Vikings blog.
This is, well, you can tell from the other podcasts that are doing like retrospectives and discussing former players and everything. There's nothing really going on.
There's nothing.
We're trying here. The other thing that's worth mentioning, we feel, is the rumor that Aaron Rodgers is now dating a witch. What exactly is going on here? And I know she's. This is a joke that was from Twitter that I'm not claiming is mine, but I'm stealing for the moment. Sure. She has adamantly denied being a witch, which is the sort of thing that a witch would do.
That is the sort of thing a witch would do. So, first of all, keep her away from the moon. That we just know that.
That is
right?
canon.
Yeah. Second, were she to be a witch, that's valid, I guess. Whatever, man. Believe what you want to believe.
We've declared Aaron Rodgers and his Hail Marys to be a form of witchcraft before. Long-time listeners of the show know
yeah, since episode 3 at least. So that would be cool. But no, there's no evidence that she's a witch. So her name is Blue. She was incorrectly reported as Blue of Earth, but that's just the name of her like Instagram handle. Her name is just Blue, and she is, I don't know, Shailene Woodley was kind of like into new agey, woo-ish type of stuff, right? She seems to be kind of along the same lines. This is just an initial impression. I could be wrong. She said that she's not a witch, but she definitely like kind of traffics in some of the same stuff that, we've associated like Shailene Woodley with in terms of like, alternative medicines and herbalistic practices and stuff like that, which is like, whatever, that's not going to cure COVID or anything. But, if you want to be naked in the sun and if that, revives your chi, more power to you or whatever.
That seems more like a Jay Cutler thing than it seems like an Aaron Rodgers thing, but.
Well, no. Jay Cutler just does that. I don't think that that's a religious experience for him.
That might actually just be what he does.
Yeah, it's just he does that now. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Like the best outcome here, right, is that she turns him into a frog. Like Rodgers' relationships seemingly have not lasted, I guess that long. They're not like Hollywood short, right? They're not like 1 month, 2 months. But he's gone through them.
Is that really the best case scenario, or is the best case scenario she convinces him to retire?
No, frog is way better. Are you kidding me? Because if he retires, he has all the time in the world to be in front of the camera and say stuff he believes.
Yeah, but that would torment justice.
I mean, it would, and that is a universal societal good. I agree. But I don't want to hear it. What if he starts doing foot stuff in front of the camera again? I don't need to see that.
The Aaron Rodgers corner is busy enough as it is.
Yeah, it's overwhelmed. Honestly, the better outcome is that she is a witch. She's denying it because that's what witches do, unless they're Wiccan, I guess. They're pretty open about being witches. If they're Wiccan, that's kind of the deal. But but no, like a cauldron, deal with the devil kind of witch, that is lying about being a witch. You know, the ones that don't exist. That's ideal, and or they don't. They want you to believe that they don't exist, right? Like that's the game. And turns it like Aaron Rodgers. You know, the relationship doesn't work out. He offends her somehow. She turns him into a frog, and we all lived happily ever after.
I'm good with him just being cursed. Like if they split and he just, you know, gets formally cursed. Although
he'll just have the same career he's been having since 2011. That's the curse.
Yes, that. You're going to make it to the NFC Championship game. Also, you are going to lose it again. Or you're going to make the division round, and San Francisco is again going to be the one who spanks you, despite the fact that, you know, you're supposed to be playing with a chip on your shoulder because that was the team that was supposed to pick you.
Right, and they're playing a, what is it, safety? Yeah, it's a safety at quarterback.
Yes, that's.
I have to keep track of who plays what at quarterback for former NDSU players. The list is getting kind of annoying.
There's so many of them at this point, and it's worth
right. So many non-quarterback quarterbacks.
Listen, I spent some time at NDSU today. All right, like it was you know, belly of the beast sort of thing, and that Adirondack chair at the NDSU Student Union bookstore is. I don't know. I sent a picture of it to you. I think I put it up on Twitter too. I was like, I don't know about this. This is weird. This is, you know, JMU would never stoop to that level. I can say that because I went to the JMU store online to see if they sold it, and they didn't. So it was like they would never stoop to this level because I went and Googled and checked. They do, however, sell lawn chairs. They just don't sell the Adirondacks, which admittedly I would want an Adirondack more than that, but that's not the point. Yeah, so Aaron Rodgers probably not dating a witch, but it would be fun to torment Justice with it if he was. But do we know if Justice is actually going to make it to Lambeau this year? I feel like that's worth checking. He is an owner.
Yeah, I mean, Justice has declared his interest in taking advantage of his ownership and, you know, going to the team he owns and is therefore morally culpable for the decisions they make. But, you know, I don't know that Justice has made plans, but I think that the idea is that he goes to Lambeau so that he can have an owner to employee meeting with the person that he's paying, Aaron Rodgers, a known COVID denier.
There you go. That's what it is. All right, let's go to the mailbag. Let's go to Alexander, who asks, will Zach Davidson be the new Tyler Conklin?
Okay, so I'm going to read Dane Brugler's scouting report of Tyler Conklin and Dane Brugler's scouting report of Zach Davidson. Conklin was used all over the formation, lining up inline, backfield, and out wide. Since 1995, he ranks number one among all Central Michigan tight ends in receiving yards and touchdown grabs. Conklin has a basketball background, which shows on the football field with his ability to quickly enter routes, pivot, and give his quarterback a target. He works hard as a blocker, but he lacks the play strength, length, or sustain skills to be consistent in this area, making it too easy for defenders to stack and shed. Overall, Conklin is inconsistent as a point of attack blocker, and the key to his NFL future will be his pass-catching traits, projecting as a potential number 2 tight end. For Zach Davidson, he wrote, raw as sushi.
Well?
So, yeah, you decide, basically.
Yeah, that's... Admittedly, that's about as good as a comparison between the two as you could. Dustin asks, with the depth at running back and a contract expiring after this year, is Alexander Madison a surprise trade candidate?
I don't think so. I think that the reason that they draft running backs is because they value having backup running backs on the roster. And I think they want to take advantage of the fact that they've got Alexander Madison on a rookie contract for one more year. So they want to know what they have in Ty Chandler, so they don't want to like get rid of Alexander Madison. And even though they're excited about Kenny Nwangwu, I don't think that they see him necessarily as a true number 2. I think that they see him as a complementary back to Dalvin Cook. We saw Nwangwu take snaps with the ones in minicamp. And so I think that that's just kind of a different category of player than Alexander Madison. So I think that they value having him under that contract. I think that they're going to continue to take advantage of it. So I don't think that Madison is a trade candidate, surprised or not. Although, if it happened, I guess I would be surprised. And honestly, you know how I feel about running backs and trying to find the best way to take advantage of them. I think a trade would be a good idea, right? But I'd be concerned if notoriously injury-prone Dalvin Cook does get injured, that Ty Chandler and Kenny Wangu could hold up as runners. But it honestly, that's not a big deal to me. So, just sign AJ Rose back again. He's not as good as Alexander Madison. Obviously, the Vikings cut him for a reason, but I think that you can get pretty reasonable running production without Dalvin Cook on the field. So, I don't think so, but I wouldn't hate it.
So Madison starts for Seattle or the Jags next year, right?
Yeah, Jaguars sounds about right. Yeah,
just because that seems to be where Minnesota running backs rather end up when they decide they're going to strike out on their own and
when they can prove they're a true number one back. Yeah,
you're going to Jacksonville. ET Spaceman asks, what will be the final score when Burkick? Am I pronouncing that right?
Sure, I don't know.
Yeah, let's go with that. When Burkick kicks a game-winning field goal against the Vikings.
The final score will be, I'm going to say 21-20. The Vikings are up by 2 before the kick.
So we mentioned that because he ended up catching on with Green Bay, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Although, I mean, honestly, it's not like he's going to beat out Mason Crosby. But,
I mean, it could happen. Let's.
Yeah, I mean, anything is possible for the power of Ben DiNucci. Right?
This is the off season of possibilities. This is the off season of signed Laquon Treadwell jerseys. All things are possible.
Yeah, anything could happen. But yeah, he caught on with Green Bay. They waived their, I don't know if backup is the right word, but their competition kicker for camp to add Gabe Burkic. So the Packers will beat the Vikings 21-20. The Vikings defense will have turned a new corner and have done a great job holding the Packers to 18 points until they don't.
All right, next question is also from ET Spaceman, who asks, for Arif's parenting corner, my 3-year-old won't say she loves me. What are the alternatives to kicking her out of the house and changing the locks?
Yeah, I see this as a unique challenge. And by that, I don't mean a challenge in getting her to say she loves you. No, into raising a child that doesn't love you. I think that's the challenge. Roll with it.
This is how you get Aaron Rodgers best people into the world. Let me be perfectly clear. I only step in on the parenting corner when your life is threatened or whatever. But this is just so you know, this is how you make Aaron Rodgers type people. This is how your person dates a witch.
If you're Aaron Rodgers' mom, right? Which, sorry, but hypothetically, you're Aaron Rodgers' mom. Are you upset with the way Aaron Rodgers has turned out, as a mother, right? Because your goal is that your kid is happy, healthy, secure, successful, maybe. Your goal is for the best things for their life. Aaron Rodgers has that. So if you raise your kid who doesn't love you, and you don't intervene on this fairly critical element of family bonding, and they turn that into fuel to be the most successful person they can be, they have many relationships, which guess it depends on your definition of successful, but maybe you could say the relationship with Danica Patrick was successful. He seems to be on amicable terms with Shailene Woodley. Aaron Rodgers, okay, maybe I shouldn't say seems happy, but he does smile a lot.
If I raised my son and he refuses to say he loves me and he turned all that into fuel, he would need at least 2 Super Bowl rings before I'd be okay with it.
Tough but fair.
Let's go with that. Alex asks, who is the player we least expect to start 5+ games?
I don't know. Chad Graff just wrote a story about Armon Watts. That's, why not him? I guess. Let me think. maybe BC Johnson, right?
That would be
KJ Osborne's
interesting.
already been a little bit hurt. I guess BC Johnson's even. No, that's Amir Smith-Marset. Yeah. KJ Osborne's been a little bit hurt in mini camp, and BC Johnson's probably the wide receiver 4. So if Adam Thielen or KJ Osborne get hurt, BC Johnson step right up. The Vikings are going to play a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. Maybe they're going to start every game in 3 wide receiver sets. That's going to give you a lot of BC Johnson, maybe. So yeah, that's a nice surprise, right? I should say nice. I don't think anyone wants that, but
it hasn't meant great things before, but it doesn't mean that doesn't mean
it's not the world's worst thing. He started games. He knows how to play football in the NFL. Can't say that about every wide receiver 4 on the planet.
Can't say that about every wide receiver who was drafted in the first round before.
No, you can't.
That Goodell picture is still staring at me. All right, next question. I'm going to turn this thing around. All right, let's go to Zach's question. Hey, Arif, love the show. How long does an offensive/defensive scheme meta usually last in the NFL? With the Vikings switching to the current meta, are they riding this wave on the way up or down? Is there a tangible benefit to being the originator of the successful scheme meta changes, or is it better to just follow suit?
Okay, so first of all, from the framing of this question, you're clearly a gamer and you don't have any rights. Second, Zach,
what?
I'm glad you love the show. Who uses the term meta like that? Gamers. Are you objecting to the second part of the statement? Sorry.
Yeah, it was the lack of rights. You proceed to talk about this. I'm going to flip a jersey. You talk.
I don't know if anyone would disagree with my statement there. I'm sure that's a pretty normal thing to believe. Anyway, so I mean, there's like a couple of iterations of this, right? Because you've got your, like right now, it's obviously the McVay offense and the Fangio defense. But like historically, you could say, hey, kind of the West Coast offense that took over for a little bit while in the 90s versus, the West Coast offense that we have now.
Oh my God, really? Sorry, you're in the middle of something. I'll explain in a second. Keep going.
Okay, good. Great. Or you could point to the Seattle cover 3 defensively. You could point to kind of the Zimmer cover 3, which is substantially different. You could point to the Tampa 2 that was around for quite a while, right? Because that's 2002 essentially, all the way to basically 2011. I think that's probably the last time that the Chicago Bears defense was like a good Tampa 2 defense. It's probably the last good Tampa 2 defense. So it kind of depends on the types of players that are available on both offense and defense and the ways that they can influence that scheme. So, for example, for the Tampa 2, it required that tight ends not be particularly athletic and that middle linebackers do be particularly athletic, and for offenses to not kind of throw slot receivers up the seam. And they just didn't have enough slot receivers to be able to do that. So there were not enough athletic tight ends for those middle linebacker mismatches. There were not enough slot receivers for teams to continuously attack that way. And that was kind of a critical part of why the Tampa 2 lasted so long, whereas the Seattle cover 3 didn't, right? Because that was, we can say 2011, maybe 2013 is when it was put on the map, but say 2011 all the way to probably like 4 years ago. So I guess it wasn't, it wasn't like really short-lived, but I wouldn't say the Seattle cover 3 was like, a sought after defense in 2020. So I would say that probably you could get about 6-7 years on an offensive or a defensive trend before things change in a particular way. Either they find a kind of a systematic solution to it, or the personnel just kind of evolves past that in terms of what's available to you. So in terms of like, is there a tangible benefit being the originator of the scheme? Probably a little bit, but only because the people who originate the scheme tend to be good and agile football minds, which is why they originated that scheme. And so the Seattle, I guess, didn't adjust the cover 3 that much, but they did adjust the front a ton over the course of their dominance with that defense. The way the Tampa 2 has kind of evolved, Tony Dungy's done a really excellent job of moving that forward. Zimmer's, had kind of some of the best versions of his defenses, as that defense has evolved. And Fangio's done a pretty good job too. But, we've seen like Brandon Staley, and we've seen, Lovie Smith. We've seen, some other elements or some other people that have learned from that system and evolved it, and they've done a great job with it. So I don't think that there's a benefit to being the originator necessarily, right? But I think that the benefit is that the originator tends to already be an innovative person. So if another innovative person like Brandon Staley becomes part of that coaching tree, they absorb any of the benefit that comes from that too. So it's not better to follow suit. It's better to have a good coach that learns that scheme. So whether that's the original coach or that's a new coach, I don't know that systematically one is necessarily better than the other. Obviously, they'll add their own tweaks or whatever to it, but I don't know that you can say that being the Pete Carroll version of the cover 3 is better than being like the Gus Bradley version of the cover 3.
So apologies for that outburst. I'd flipped it over, and the certificate of authenticity was on the back.
Whoa! Oh, okay.
So this, and I looked it up, and I just sent you the link. This is in fact a verified signed jersey.
Well, it's verified signed. Great.
So that is a thing.
Thanks, James Spence Authentication.
Yep, LLC. Just
cool.
I saw
it was signed in Frankfort, Illinois on June 29th, 2016. So, which means it cannot possibly be game worn. We will continue to insist that it was.
It might as well have been. Let's go to Joe Justice, who asks, according to the Book of Judges, Samson kills a lion, rips it open, and finds bees and honey in its carcass. Am I to interpret this to mean that so long as Norse Code advances its beekeeping corner, we will always triumph over, at minimum, the lions?
I mean, the bees didn't kill that lion, right? Cards on the table here, if this hasn't already been clear. I've never read the Bible. I'm just going to take Joe Justice's word for it. That's the order of events for that story. Do they call them story? Are they all parables? I don't really know. But the bees were already there, right? And Samson killed the lion. So the bees didn't kill the lion. Samson did. So I think that really the bees are just kind of like a bonus, right? Do we get to call them bonuses? I don't really know how to handle biblical stories. Let's say that it's a bonus. The bees and honey are a bonus, and they provide Samson with an additional reward beyond just the satisfaction of killing a lion. And also, I'm sure he had a purpose, right? Like the lion was terrorizing a town. I really don't know anything about the Bible.
If I may interject, and this may help answer your question. The beekeeping corner was going strong last season, and the Vikings lost that game. So.
Right. So that speaks to my point a little bit, right?
Yes.
Is that when you defeat the lions or a lion, it feels better because of the presence of bees and honey.
Yeah.
So the beekeeping corner accentuates the victories when they occur. That's all it does. But it does not guarantee that victory.
Are you trying to say that life is sweeter with the bee corner and the... Yeah, I'm going to stop here.
Is it a honey joke? No, I didn't think about that. No. Of course I did. Come on, man.
I was just trying to put a hat on a hat. In case you were curious, the Vikings-oriented stuff is basically done for the episode. We've got a number of questions left here, however, so we're just going to keep going and turn this into the corner. Logan asks, what's so shocking about the Deshaun Watson news last week? Isn't it more of the same that Cleveland already showed that they don't care about?
I mean, like, yes and no, because the implication, which, kind of very few people believe, but the implication is that when Cleveland had conducted their investigation into the Deshaun Watson stuff, they were comfortable because Deshaun Watson was not indicted in the 2 grand jury proceedings that he had undergone, and that the damage in terms of reputation that at the time, I believe it was 23 women who were alleging sexual misconduct, for whatever reason, maybe it's an evidentiary standard thing, maybe it's just a confidence in the NFL product thing, which, that second one is kind of a little bit more disgusting to contemplate, but of course is a big part of this whole thing. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation at all anyway. Was enough, right? And so hearing new news come out about the fact that Deshaun Watson worked with or scheduled 66 different masseuses over the period of time that's being covered, and all but 13 of them, I guess, had issue or something like that. I'm going to link the article, which I believe is a New York Times article, so you can get kind of everything about it. But in terms of the number of women who've come forward since then, since that article was published, as of this recording, Tony Busby, the lawyer representing, I believe, 23 of the women, but not necessarily all of the women, but he's been referred from some independent suits that are going to kind of be a part of the whole action, that there's going to be at least 2 or 3 more. So instead of 23, at the outset, it then was 24, and then after this article might be 25. But there are additional women who spoke to the author of the article, who wanted to retain their anonymity and then decided as a result of that not to file a civil suit, but are confirming that these things occurred. In addition, there was one additional woman, again, this is as far as I know, that was party to the criminal action, but has not, as far as I know, filed a civil suit. So in addition to the 25, there is potentially a 26th woman who wanted some consequence as a result of what she alleges that Deshaun Watson did. Anyway, the shocking thing is kind of that it runs even deeper. Now, from like a human perspective, if you learned on day one that there were 24 women that alleged that Deshaun Watson engaged in sexual misconduct, that's shocking. Would your brain have been more shocked or disgusted if you learned it was 53? Probably not. Like, obviously, it's meaningful, it's impactful that that's twice as many people that feel hurt, right? Like, for the additional, like, 27 people or however many it is, that's it's the most meaningful thing, right? It's so big, right? A lot of them could be so. And so from a human perspective, obviously 27 more is a lot. But in terms of how your brain processes it, it's probably not that different, because at some point a large number is a large number and you're just kind of horrified that this is a possibility. But learning that it is 24 and then that it could be up to 66, but is probably something like 53 or something along those lines. That's just how human brains work, right? Is that you learn that it's one thing, eventually over time you kind of absorb the enormity of it, and it becomes kind of background information in terms of the way that you're perceiving it. And then you learn, actually, no, it's twice as large or whatever. And that kind of just hits you again, which, like, honestly, like, that's just kind of a failing of human cognition. Like, we should always be kind of upset that there's like 26 or something along those lines. That is an enormous number. It's kind of the way that they're thinking about it is probably correct. And I'm talking about a specific group of people. So just in 1 second, the way that they're thinking about it is probably correct, but it feels inhuman the way that they talk about it. And I'm talking about the football nerds that have talked about it, which, as far as I know, are universally condemning Watson. So like, Timo Risk and Eric Eager and Frisco Josh, which Josh Hermsmeyer. For some reason, I used his Twitter handle and I used the names of the other two. And the Unexpected Points pod, Kevin Cole, that's it, have all essentially argued in one way or the other. The odds that 24 or 26 women are not telling the truth are vanishingly small. It is the odds that one woman is lying to the 24th power or something along those lines, right? And yeah, that's true, but that is a kind of a weird way to put it. But if that's what it takes to get you to a conclusion that you feel comfortable with, that's fine. The thing is, like, they're kind of treating them like independent observations, like mathematically. And that's not necessarily the case, but either way, I mean, I think my thoughts on this are pretty clear. So I don't want to like go too hard critiquing this frame of thought because it leads to a very similar conclusion to mine. But 26 is an enormous, disgusting number, right? If the allegations are true. Which again, I've got my thoughts and I think I've made it clear. But hearing it again in a different form is what the shocking thing is, and it's why people have been additionally critical of the Browns, who it very much seems like did not do the due diligence that they've kind of implied that they did, although no one really believes that they did do due diligence, especially because no teams talked to the victims or the victims' lawyers in part of their investigation, which is kind of a pretty poor investigation. We talked about this when it came to the Vikings and Ed Ingram.
Yeah. So it does feel a bit like more of the same, but it feels like worse as it continues. So this, we'll find out soon just where this trade really ranks among the worst of all time.
From both a moral and an outcome perspective, there's more information yet to come that'll inform the way that we'll interpret the trade.
You do have to feel for those Cleveland fans that are trying to escape, I guess, fandom. They're like, you know what? We're good. We don't need to deal with this.
Yeah,
you got to feel for the Cleveland fan base at this point. This wasn't exactly something that was real. Nobody really liked Baker Mayfield, but they wanted to. They thought he probably could have another year. He brought him to the playoffs. And
yeah, plus, I mean, he played injured last year. Maybe it's not fair to, which, like, obviously Cleveland knows that he played injured, so they made the determination knowing that. But, like,
if you can
very easily convince yourself that Baker Mayfield's the future, and that has been foreclosed, and replaced with something that has this dark cloud over it. It's just very difficult as a fan to kind of interpret it.
If you were looking for morality to come into play with the Haslams, you're looking in the wrong place.
Oof.
Like this, a lot of things have been legally been discussed with the ownership of the Browns. So just let's just leave it at that. Bob the Pigeon asks, if Kirk Cousins was in Luke Skywalker's position during the Battle of the Death Star, the first one, what are the chances he would, quote, trust the Force and go off script and turn off the playbook / targeting computer?
Yeah, so this is the Battle over Yavin 4. So the thing is, Kirk Cousins is coachable, but he's not coachable to go off script. So this is actually a really good question, because if his headset tells him that he needs to trust himself, like he will do what his headset says until it comes to being instinctive. So my guess is that he does not turn off the targeting computer. And the rebellion dies, right? Because almost the entirety of the rebel forces are concentrated in the fourth moon of Yavin, and they were seconds, if not minutes away. I guess maybe minutes away from firing the Death Star laser, which of course would have destroyed the entirety of the rebel leadership and most of its soldiers. So no, I don't think that he would go off script and turn off the playbook targeting computer, but I don't think the chances are zero. I think having his headset tell him to trust himself and trust the Force, and because the headset does, like, Obi-Wan does not tell him turn off the targeting computer. He just says, was it believe in the Force? The phrase?
Boy, it's been a while since. I like how I've seen a ton of other Star Wars stuff, and
I've consumed so much Star Wars media. It's been a while since I've consumed the original one.
Trust your feelings, Luke.
There it is. Yeah, that's a rough one to tell Cousins, huh?
You broke out Battle of Yavin 4 to show your nerd superiority.
Yeah, it's crazy that I was like, the fourth moon of Yavin, and I was like, but what does Obi-Wan say?
Yeah, that was the thing that made you stumble.
That's like classic nerd culture stuff right there, right? Yes, Mon Mothma was on Yavin 4. Who? Arif, who are you talking about?
Don't ask Arif for that answer. Ask Dusty. That's what you should do.
But yeah, so I would say if his coach tells him to trust your feelings, he would do everything in his power to execute upon that command, but he would not have the lateral thinking capability in the moment, in the clutch, as he's staring down the barrel during the 30 seconds, right? In the final 30 seconds of the game, to paint outside the lines and turn off the targeting computer, because Luke makes that decision himself, right? He's trust your feelings, Luke. Luke searches his feelings, and it tells him to turn off the targeting computer, which fine. And he goes back to firing at Womp Rats. Is that the?
Well, if he survived that would end up being like survive the explosion and all that. I think he would have survived it in the newer movies. I don't think he would have survived it in the older movies.
Cousins or
yes.
Luke?
Okay. Skywalker
Luke
flying away
survives, James. I don't know what you're talking about.
Skywalker flying away from the Death Star after the explosion of the movie.
Well, it did, because the explosion they fly out as the photon torpedoes are going down the exhaust vent, so they have time. Their time limit is how long it takes.
The whole time frame was questionable.
It is not. It doesn't. I don't think it makes sense, but I think it holds up to fridge logic, right? Like, I think if you go to the fridge and grab a beer and you don't suddenly think, wait a second, the Death Star exploded, how could they have gotten out of it? Because they even have a diagram while they're... Okay, I do remember a lot about this movie. They even have a diagram while they're going over the plans to blow up the Death Star, and it takes time for the modeled photon torpedo to go down the exhaust vent and hit the core. And so that is the amount of time that they... So they do set up that there is time between firing and it going into the exhaust vent and getting out of Dodge. Now, the thing is, it holds up to movie logic first glance. It doesn't hold up to any more than that because, one, photon torpedoes are not slow, but two, that explosion is insanely large. That's the more important part. It could take that long, but that thing is the size of a small moon. It has its own gravity, right? Like,
this is
Ewok genocide stuff.
If we use the destruction of the space, this is a Vikings podcast, folks. If we use the explosion from the Independence Day movie, the first one, of the mothership and the flying away and the
mothership is much smaller, by the way, than the Death Star.
Yeah, but like all the material that came from that explosion that goes toward the and like nearly kills Jeff Goldblum and Will Smith when they're trying. Spoiler alert from a movie from 1997
for Independence Day.
But if you're looking at that, like the flying directly away from that, like. If you made it to the planet, fine, but the period of time still seems questionable as to whether or not you could pull off getting away from that like quick enough.
Right, and so I know...
I don't mean to sound like a Yavin 4 truther here, or saying that the Empire blew up the Death Star themselves in order to further the conflict with the rebels. I don't mean to do any sort of loose change here. I just have questions.
Just ask questions, yeah.
I'm Pete Carroll in this situation.
That there are people that listen to the Star Wars takes, and then I tell them something, and they look into it, because people still talk to us about Machete Order, which, dope. That is the correct order to watch the movies in. Google Machete Order. But the thing I wanted you to Google out of this conversation is actually, although that changes because of the sequels, which, but not really. The thing that I want you to get out of this is for you to Google Death Star 2 Ewok genocide, because there's this whole theory about how blowing up the second Death Star over the forest moon of Endor, which I gotta say, now that I've talked about Yavin 4 and stuff like that, the forest moon of Endor is itself controversial within the fan base, because is the name of the moon Endor, or is it a moon of Endor? And I think the solution that they came up with in Legends was that they're both named Endor, which is so Star Wars and dumb. That is so funny to me.
That is... That's like the name of their jazz music, and I'm not even going to...
Right.
I don't even need to go into that.
Podcast. But Endor's a gas giant, and then there's the forest moon of Endor. Anyway, the second Death Star, when it blows up, there are a lot of fan theories out there backed up by science, because who else is as big a Star Wars nerd as somebody who can calculate the outcome of the explosion of the second Death Star, that figure out essentially, the Ewoks are just wiped out. It's not close. They're all dead because the explosion occurs so close to the moon. Now,
but the
same thing is not necessarily true with Yavin, but
they partied, Arif. They partied in the music.
James, that occurred in the movie. That's not important. What happened in the movie? No one cares about that.
It's fan theories that are the most important. My bad. I forgot that it's a take industry. My bad. I get it.
But the difference here is that the original Death Star was orbiting Yavin, whereas Death Star 2 is orbiting the moon of Endor, called Endor. So that's why the Death Star 2 is close enough, but the first Death Star wasn't. That's why that theory does that.
This is terrible. All right, let's get back to some Norse Code basics. From Raul, for Arif's beekeeping corner, I had a patient who was a beekeeper. The thought crossed my mind to discuss bee racism with her to build a rapport. I thought better of it. What topics in the beekeeping world would be more appropriate?
I am so... Is there a word for being both simultaneously extremely happy and very upset?
I believe it's called being a Vikings fan.
I knew you were going to say that. Perfect. Okay, great. I am so Vikings fan about this. Because, as soon as somebody who listens to this podcast encounters a beekeeper, they're like, got to talk about bee racism. Anyway, I'm glad you held back on talking about bee racism, because you never talk about politics with your patients. So that makes sense. But what topics of the beekeeping world would be more appropriate? The optimal distance that you want to set up the flowers that you want to pollinate. I think Cody's lab, actually, I think it's called Cody's Bee Lab, on YouTube, just recently released a video as to why you don't want flowers too close to the beehive. You could have conversations about, populating new hives, or replacing queens in hives where the queen has died. You could have conversations about... No, actually, hybridization is a little bit too close. So let's not go there. You could have conversations about, the appropriate way to make bees receptive to intervention of some sort. So like whether or not you use smoke, whether or not, bees need to recognize your scent to be comfortable around you, which I think is a myth, but I don't really know for sure. But yeah, those are all topics that you could talk about, especially the flower one, and how to create an optimal setup so that you can get flavored honey. Because if you get a beehive to only pollinate from one flower, that ends up flavoring the honey that you produce, which is why we have basically honey varietals, right? And so how to get an optimal setup for that. That's what you could talk about.
So next question is from Andrew Shad, who asks, are there any Vikings players, past or present, you would want at your wedding reception? And would you hypothetically forego catering in order to pay for their appearance?
Oh, this is a Mickey Mouse question.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Additionally, is a wedding at a stadium better or worse than a Disney wedding?
Okay, a wedding at a stadium, if you've had a wedding at a stadium and you've enjoyed it, genuinely, I'm happy for you. I couldn't do it because my perception of that is that it is remarkably sad, not because you have an attachment to the team. People form emotional attachments to all kinds of things, and a football team is just one of them. But because a stadium is so friggin' huge that it's just going to feel empty, and I don't want to have a wedding in an area where it feels empty. That is my issue.
I've DJ'd at the Ralph Engelstead Arena like on ice, like not on the ice itself, but where the ice would typically be. And that was weird. We had a ton of people. It was a huge event, but like that was still felt a little weird.
Right. And so if it's at like Lambeau, which is a very popular one, that's much bigger than Ralph Engelstad Arena, right? Or US Bank, which is like much more cavernous, right? Because Lambeau's at least like open, right? Yeah. Like that I couldn't, right? But it isn't as I want to respect people who form attachments to media. I just talked about the nitty gritty of Star Wars for a canon that's not even canon anymore, right? So I recognize that, and I still think the Disney wedding stuff is just a little bit too far. A lot of people dunk on Disney adults, and it's mean spirited, and my brain says, Arif, they just enjoy a thing. Let them enjoy a thing. They're usually not hurting anyone, but I can't. It's nuts. It's insane to me. And my brain and my heart are fighting. I probably just have an unethical response to this. Jesus Christ, stop. It's kind of my approach. And I just talked about the Star Wars stuff in excruciating detail. And I still, like, the Disney wedding stuff is just wild to me. But but I could get over, if I go to a wedding at Disney World or Disneyland or whatever, and there's Mickey there, and the park has been set up for it, and I get to spend a little bit of time at Disney World, which I've enjoyed because we were very strategic about it. Like, I don't have a problem going to Disney World as an adult and enjoying some of the rides and stuff like that. And that's fine. But the thing that blew up was was that the Reddit? Where somebody disclosed essentially that they forewent catering for 2 30-minute appearances over the course of 2 days of Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. And it seemed like the guests were led to believe in some way that there would be food there because they said that there would be food there. And in their mind, they weren't lying because there was. It's Disney World. You can find food. And that's what they meant by it. That's nuts to me. I think you have an obligation to feed your guests generally or make it extremely clear, right, that you're not feeding your guests. And they can make the choice weeks, maybe months before they go to Disney World. Not a cheap trip. To attend your wedding. So there's that. Chad Greenway, you've done so much for my career just by kind of existing and not doing anything different. Mm-hmm. It would be so fun to have you at my wedding because that is hilarious. That's a good joke. But no, there's no way I'm paying your appearance fee and foregoing catering. Especially like food's one of the things. I like food. That's like of my hobbies, food is up there relative to other people. I absolutely would get I would be so, I wouldn't be as snooty as Dusty, but he's in the industry, right? He gets a right to it. But I'd be so snooty about the catering that I'd want to get it.
What if Greenway showed up and instead of his appearance fee, he was just able to prominently feature the Duck Duck Grey Duck vodka line?
I knew that was going to come up, and I haven't had it. My understanding of the vodka is that it is kind of mid. Again, I don't know. But yeah, that rules. Yeah, let's do it. It's wedding vodka. Like Dusty is not going to be the bar person. He would be offended. I don't care. It's a wedding, man. That's fine. I'm good. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's really good.
I wasn't disappointed by it. It was okay. I thought my only impression of the vodka was like it didn't taste bad. It seemed passable.
Honestly, that's like for a lot of American vodkas, it's hard to get to that bar.
Yeah, but the problem was that the bottle shattered incredibly easily. Like it fell off the fridge, like a big bottle of it. Very thick bottle of it shattered the moment that it hit the ground, and I was like, "Really?
That's interesting."
That was an odd That was
Yeah.
and that was a couple of years ago. I don't know if they've changed bottles or whatever, but I haven't dropped any.
It's not a regular occurrence.
No, definitely not a regular occurrence. No. All right, let's go to Ian Pauly, who asks, we have a football question. PFF recently had the O-line shift from 23rd up to 19th overall. Do you agree that the moves made this offseason warrant an upgrade, or could this be indicative of competition getting worse?
I actually think offensive lines are getting slightly better across the league compared to like 2015. Like that was, and obviously I was watching the Vikings a lot, and that was pretty bad, but like the Chargers line and the Colts line and some of the other offensive lines around the league were just so bad. There were very few like good ones that, people were really excited about. Like I was at the time, it was like the Saints and the Ravens, if I remember correctly. And the offensive lines that are really good today, I think there's more of them that you could talk about being like really high level, whether if the Browns offensive line returns to their like 2019 or 2020 form, or if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, once they have a resolution for Ali Marpet's retirement, or I just assume the Ravens are going to figure out this offensive line thing. I kind of always have that assumption. Green Bay is going to be up there again. Those offensive lines are really good. And I think the bad offensive lines that we're seeing now aren't as bad as they were in 2015. I wouldn't and we've had some of the people I think the Vikings played against somebody who was like complaining about the state of how awful their offensive line was. And I still don't think it was worse than the 2015 Vikings, and the 2015 Vikings weren't the worst offensive line in 2015. So I do think that it's probably not competition getting worse. I think that offensive lines are generally getting better than they were a few years ago. That said, I do think that there is a way you could warrant an upgrade, because if and I haven't seen this article, and I'll link it in the show notes, but if PFF is saying 23rd at the end of the season, 19th preseason, that's kind of interesting. I don't know what to do about that. But if PFF is saying it was 19th in the preseason this year, and it was 23rd in the preseason last year, that makes a lot of sense to me, because Rashad Hill was the projected starter at left tackle. Now the Vikings are basically starting either Jesse Davis or Ed Ingram, maybe Chris Reed, although he seems to have no longer been like part of he was rotating early in OTS and minicamp, and now it just seems to be Jesse Davis. So it's either Jesse Davis or Ed Ingram, and I think that that's like just better than Oli Udoh. And so you could say that, moving up 4 spots or something like that is warranted. And getting certainty about kind of who Christian Darrisaw is. So yeah, I think so. And Ezra Cleveland being kind of a known quantity of being like fine at guard. That I think that makes sense to move them from 23rd to 19. And I think that basically with the Vikings offensive line, that's kind of what fans are asking for. It's like, oh, is this indistinguishable from an average offensive line? Thank God.
Well, let's also go to a question from Ian Pauly about relationships. Also, relationship/cooking corner combo question. My wife insists upon cooking healthy food, and at 32, I feel I have a decent grasp of what I consider to be palatable. The next time it's essentially insisted I make quinoa, what can I counter with as a decent alternative? Organic brown rice was balked at.
So recently, in terms of like grains that people consider healthy, that I've liked a lot and enjoyed a lot, quinoa, or not quinoa. Sorry, that's what you were suggested. Couscous is what I meant. Where I kind of treat it a little bit like a risotto, except not as much butter. Where I fry it a little bit, as the dry pasta that couscous is, I fry it a little bit in a little bit of butter. You could just use kind of a neutral or even like a healthier oil, like olive oil, fry below the smoke point, and just kind of get it a little bit toasty. Pour in some chicken stock. And if to you healthy means, removing some sodium, then, low sodium chicken stock, I think that's a way to lead kind of a less interesting life. So I wouldn't, but if that's what it means, I would pour in chicken stock, and just kind of let that become your grain. Sometimes I'll fry up a shallot with it, put the shallot in a little bit beforehand, put the diced shallot in a little bit beforehand. So that could be the grain that you use. But like, honestly, to me, my priority with health is to remove sugar from my diet, and that change specifically. I know I was talking earlier about doing what is it, keto, which was a lot, and it worked. But like honestly, the change to just removing just sugar from the diet, having as many fats as possible, making sure that I meet my macros and stuff like that, that has been the best for me in terms of diet. So for me, the word healthy means reducing the amount of sugar. It doesn't mean, low sodium unless you've got like specifically a sodium issue that you've got to deal with, or you're eating kind of a lot of processed foods that tend to have a lot of sodium in them. It doesn't mean low fat. I don't think that there's really any relationship there between health or weight and the amount of fat that you consume. It's really just about like sugar content. And often low-fat foods have sugar added to make up for the lost flavor. So the word healthy doesn't mean, but I feel like a lot of people think couscous is healthy. And yeah, why not that? I don't know if it is, but it's not sugary, so I like it.
Yeah, let's go with that. I was just going to suggest, some cilantro butter rice, and if you got a problem with the butter aspect of it, just toss in some margarine, you'll be fine, right? That's kind of how that works.
Just fry it in margarine.
What could go wrong? Kyle Slaby asks, here we go. Kyle Slaby asks, irony and chaos are again in vogue. We might very well see a multi-million-dollar sequel made up to be a historically bad movie. I don't know if he was talking about Top Gun or Jurassic Park, but...
I think he's talking about Morbius.
Oh, yeah.
Morbius 2. The Morbining.
Oh, God. In that case, cook us up a scenario, see what you did there, in which Norse Code listeners could catfish you into live shows that no one shows up for.
Jesus.
VPN, I think, is the only answer here. If you were to use a VPN to say that you were, in a specific city, and all of a sudden we had thousands of listens in that particular city when we were looking at potential live shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not gonna go and do the North Korea live show event. Probably
it would have to be credible, and we'd have to be able to go there.
Yeah,
and we'd have to have a reason to go there aside from there being listeners, like a Vikings game. Like those are all important elements to that. So yeah, probably not North Korea. Doesn't meet any of those three.
The Slovakia Norse Code live show is going to be amazing. Quite frankly,
honestly, yeah.
Let's be clear.
Yeah.
We're going back to. I'm a Eastern European mutt anyway, so that whole area is basically like no one's gonna like wince at my last name. They're they're not gonna pronounce it correctly. They're just not gonna wince. Let's get into the Case Cookus corner. In case you haven't been paying attention, Case Cookus is getting all sorts of success inside the USFL, and Arif, it's time to have your victory lap about this. Drunken Vike, can Arif Hassan adopt some sort of meme take about my success and happiness so that it can come true too?
So I think Eric Eager ran the numbers. Okay, so first of all, rant. PFF is doing USFL charting and grading, and they are not releasing it to the public. What the hell, man?
Demand this from your PFF representatives.
I can't believe it. Anyway, the Stars just dismantled the Pittsburgh Maulers, which is not a particularly. It was difficult for them, but it shouldn't have been. Maulers are not good. But Case Cookus is just like he has revived the team ever since he took over. So
as you knew he would.
Yeah, I mean. They've had 4 straight victories, right? I mean, like that's, come on. Ever since Case Cookus has been starting, they've been on fire. So yeah, I mean, I think Eric Eager gave them about a 20% chance to win the whole thing, which is pretty high. I think they were 4th in the odds after like the 2 teams that only have like 1 loss between both of them combined. I think the Birmingham whoever's, which I think is next on the schedule. No, it's New Jersey. Is next on the schedule. I'm going to take a quick look at the USFL standing so I get this right. But ever since that change, the Stars have been doing really well. So the Stars are 6-3, but they're on a 4-game winning streak. The New Jersey Generals, which is one of those 2 teams I mentioned. Oh, the Stallions did just lose, so there are no undefeated teams left. The Generals lost their first game and then won the next 8, so they're 8-1. The Stallions won their first 8 and just lost one, so they're 8-1 as well. And then the Stars are 6-3. They're tied with the New Orleans Breakers. Again, the city names don't mean anything. They all play in Birmingham. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, they all play in Birmingham, and the championship game is in Canton, Ohio.
It's beautiful. Like I could not construct a funnier scenario for a league. But yeah, they all stay in Birmingham. They all play in Birmingham. There have been unique situations where people have like they play their game and then the next day they have off because they won, and so they just one of the coaches of the teams just went to because they played on Saturday and they went to the Sunday games and just ate a hot dog in the stands. They were a fan. They were just watching. They just crazy. I've never heard of that. So the Breakers and the Stars are 6-3. Now the North Division has an 8-1 team, a 6-3 team, and then 2 1-8 teams. Boy, the South Division at least has a 4-5 team and a 2-7 team. But that North Division is just crazy imbalanced. The Maulers might be the worst team that's ever taken the field. It's brutal that they're this bad. Anyway, the Stars beat them by like 1 point this last weekend, and I believe in them.
Like I believe in Case Cookus. Let's go to Ojibwe Pun, who asks, now that Case Cookus is a spring NFL star, what's Arif's next project?
I can't, like, you can't force it, right? Like, Case Cookus arrived on the scene, and that was fascinating enough that we turned it into a thing, which, thank you, by the way, because I can't just do it by myself. I need interaction. And everyone else who tweeted Case Cookus at me or retweeted the Case Cookus tweets or even interacted with the Case Cookus tweets, this is everybody's victory. If you participated, it's your victory too. If you didn't, screw you. But if you did participate, if you engaged, you get a little bit. You get a little bit. But yeah, I don't know what the next project is. Well, okay, here's one thing. So I am currently monitoring the Tua Tagovailoa situation because it seems like, based off of the available evidence, he can only throw right. Now, I have been given tons of quarterback heat maps over the past couple of years because people want me to make whatever quarterback they're sending me into the next Mitchell Trubisky who can't throw left. And I believe it's Tua can't throw right. I'll double check. But those are usually one-offs or like 4-game samples. They're not like full seasons. And Tua might be there. And he's a left-handed quarterback, right? So it would make sense that thing would flip. But it was such a unique offense for him that it might just be kind of the way that's tailored in terms of quick reads. Now that he's got an offense that there's some evidence, the Mike McDaniel's offense, that there's some evidence that can work, we'll see kind of how it goes. But that is the closest thing we have to like kind of the next bit. But usually the bits just kind of occur. You can't force it.
So the next thing in the Case Cookus wrap up here is from Brian, who asks, Arif, what is your favorite Case Cookus moment? The first time I tweeted Case Cookus with no context. The second one was like his 50-yard touchdown. But that was pretty spectacular. I was listening to the original Case Cookus moment and just enjoyed that, where you're just like, yep, that's a real person's name, Case Cookus. Let's go to Chris, who asks, what are the steps that would need to be taken if the Vikings decided they needed to sign an ascending Case Cookus, and to what level would you ascend if they did again?
Oh, I would float into heaven for sure.
Like, we would have to find a way to get him on the show at that point.
Oh yeah, easily. And this time I'd be able to reach out to Vikings PR and make it happen. Yeah. Okay. So that would rule. The thing is, after Case Cookus finishes his MVP season, he's going to be in pretty high demand. He could even earn a contract as high as $1 million. So the Vikings would have to win a bidding war. Now, I believe every team in the league, except for 3, have $1 million in cap space. So it would be tough to win that bidding war. But Case Cookus does have experience with the Vikings. And I'm sure he loved his 3 days in a Vikings uniform. I'm sure he'd love to come back, especially. I think he's avoiding me. So, I think that that's going to be a disincentive, if anything. But let's pretend he's not.
Yeah.
Which, okay, honestly, by the way, if he is, I totally get it. This whole thing has been very weird. I literally no ill will against him. I'm 100% serious about that. If he's ignoring me, fine. This has to be bizarre. But I hope he's not. But yeah, that would be kind of a disincentive if that's the case. Cookus. But I would imagine that, because that was kind of one of his 3 moments of NFL exposure, that the Vikings would be relatively high up on that list. And so, the Vikings $1 million contract is probably worth a little bit more, especially because Kirk Cousins doesn't have a solid future and the Vikings don't really have a quarterback of the future because Kellen Mond is, whatever. Then, maybe some other teams would be interested in signing him. I don't know that even with all the trouble that the Cardinals are having with the Arizona Cardinals are having with Kyler Murray, that you would view that situation as one where you could, if you played well enough, become the starting quarterback, right? Or,
that could still be difficult. Yeah. Kenneth Allen asks, for Arif's Case Cookus corner, has Arif invested in a life insurance policy for when Case Cookus is a starting NFL quarterback after dominating the USFL and Arif dies over stimulation? Bits this good can kill.
1, life insurance is a scam. 2, yeah, I have it. That's just one of the workplace benefits I get at The Athletic. I'd rather have that turned into salary, but I didn't get that option. So, yeah, I've got life insurance, and I believe it covers that exact scenario.
Yes. Death by overstimulation is, in fact, listed there. Yeah. DJ Sobish asks me for James's Cook's cases for not cutting corners corner. As gasoline skyrockets, Lions fans are struggling with the realization that its consumption may not be economically feasible as a coping mechanism this season. Many have taken to drinking what Reddit calls, quote, the Kool-Aid. As a cook who couldn't conceivably cut corners but can't come to a concoction, how would you use the blue-flavored sugar water in a marinade for chicken wings to pair with our new beverage of choice? Yes, I will make them.
This is on you. It's your corner. It's on you.
Oh yeah, this is clearly James's
Cook's cases for not cutting corners corner. Sobish, this makes no sense. But
I couldn't find anything about a marinade for chicken wings and Kool-Aid. However, people have made glazes out of Kool-Aid, which sounds terrible, but it is a thing that apparently you should look into because that's a terrible thought. But if you want blue wings, there are. Well, I was going to say there's worse ways to get them. I don't know if there are, actually. I think this is it. Dusty asks, what are your thoughts on jukeboxes in airport bars? So Dusty and I were texting each other the other morning because he was dealing with something. He was dealing with a million delays at the airport, and he was sitting at the bar, and they were playing D12's Purple Pills at 8 a.m. That bar goes hard as hell. So we were talking about whether or not, because most bars in airports do not have any form of jukebox, and whether or not there should be. Because my thought process is I would love to just sit and listen to whatever terrible thing somebody thinks that the rest of the airport bar patrons need to hear at this particular hour, especially if it's before noon. I definitely want to know what's on that person's playlist because that sounds terrible and amazing.
Yes.
Dusty disagrees and says that's what talking at bars is for. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I get the point. I personally am for the idea of a jukebox at an airport bar. I think that's terrible and I love it.
Some things are sacred about airport bars. For example, if anyone tells you what time it is when you order an alcoholic drink, they have violated the sanctity of that airport bar. But classiness is not that thing, right? Normal operation is not one of the elements of a airport bar that's sacred. That, I think, making an airport bar even more of a mess is in line with the spirit of the experience.
Yeah, it's basic. It's if anyone tells you what time it is in an airport bar, that person should get punched. I'm sorry, that's the rules. Time does not exist there. You should just accept that. But no, there are certain things that should just exist in airport bars. This for me is one of them. James Kuno asks, for James, why am I getting questions this episode? My coworker thinks she took driver's ed and special studies from your dad. Yes, likely they did. My dad taught driver's ed in the North Dakota area for like 30 years. There's a really good chance that she took it from my dad. I went to college in Minneapolis for, like, after I got my generals taken care of in North Dakota. I went to college in Minneapolis. I'm in downtown. My first day, we're doing so, like, there's one of the instructors is asking people to introduce themselves, where they're from. I think the question was, what was the first CD you ever bought? And mine wasn't a bot. Mine was like the first CD I stole from my older brother. And so we're explaining this, and I say, my name is James Pagashnik from Grand Forks, North Dakota. First CD I ever stole from my younger brother was Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses. And Nice. Then the guy next to me goes, dude, you are James. Okay. Dude, I took driver's ed from your dad. It's like, I'm 4.5 hours away from home.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
Really? This is what we're dealing with? So yes, that is very likely a thing. He did teach a number of people driver's ed and terrified all of them. So good. Nolan Kaler asks, for Arif's Conspiracy Corner, since you've done exhaustive work documenting the Avril/Melissa journey over the years, I want to pose a new query to both of you. Can Leah Michelle read?
Okay, so this initially was kind of like a meme in 2018. I was trying to figure out why it was. It turns out it's because of a podcast where during a live show that was recorded on Facebook video, which has since been deleted, they went through the exhaustive effort of proving that Leah Michelle could not read. And I remember this. It was hilarious, right? What else could it be? And I'm happy talking about this because, like, she's taking it like a champ. But like the evidence that they cited was it was incredible. Like, we went through a bunch of pictures of her on social media, and in not one of them is she reading anything. She's not looking at her phone, which, by the way, she does have an assistant that does all of her phone stuff. So that's very convenient for the purposes of this conspiracy. She does very few shows, but she does the same show for years and years and years because she only has to memorize it once. She only ever on Glee performed old classics that you would typically see on Broadway by like Celine Dion or Barbra Streisand. My favorite is they went through her Instagram. And they were like, okay, so any photo that's captioned with just emojis, and there's a lot of them, she did that. Any photo that's just text, her assistant did that, and there's very few of those. And if it has text and emojis, her assistant wrote the text, and she got to pick the emojis, which is great. There are pictures of her signing things like a chalkboard or a pen, but there's never a moment where she is mid-signing. There's no photo where she is mid-signing. The pen, for example, is never touching the book. Or on the chalkboard, the video of her signing a chalkboard with her name, all you see is the video of her underlining a name that was already written there, right? Her book just doesn't have many words in it. It's really just photos and recipes and workouts. The whole thing started because I guess there's a beef between her and the granddaughter of an actor she was working with. The actor, so they're both in the scene together. The actor wants to improvise something, and the whole shtick of this thing is that someone reads a script to her and she memorizes it based off of that. So she's very beholden to that very specific memorization of the script. And so she is upset about this improvisation. Now, I think that this is weak as hell, but this is how awesome conspiracies like this are. So you just kind of have to roll with it. So she's upset about it and she doesn't want to do improv. And I guess that upset the person, the granddaughter of this actor, the way that she interacted with the whole situation, the way that Lea Michele interacted with the whole situation, and she wrote a book about it. And the way that I guess Lea Michele talks about the book makes it seem like she just definitely didn't read it, which is how this all came about. The hosts of the podcast were like, "Oh, it's probably because she just can't read," and then they just went with it. This rules. She has since explained, that she can read, but her assistant might have said that. Her assistant always has her phone, so she might have just quote tweeted it and said, "I loved reading this tweet and wanted to write you back, literally laughing out loud at all of this. Love you." Some emojis. Obviously, she chose the emojis. But I think she has gone on air, if I'm remembering this correctly, and has demonstrated that she can read. Now, of course, that could all be a setup. You don't go on air as someone in her position without a PR kind of like working this out for you. And so maybe these were all like she was told what she would need to read, and so she just remembered it. There's a bunch of small things, right? Like she's playing Cards Against Humanity on stage, and everyone else shuffles their cards, but she doesn't because she was told beforehand what her cards were, so she can't move them around because she won't be able to tell apart which ones they are. It's incredible. I'm going to link like a Twitter recap. There's a Twitter video recap of the 40-minute podcast, which again does not exist anymore as far as I can tell. Now, I think that Lea Michele can read, but this conspiracy theory rules.
That is about as fun a sentence or fun of series of sentences you can have. I think she can read, but I also appreciate the ridiculousness of all of this.
Yes.
Let's go to Don from Ohio, who asks, with the success of prior Vikings beat writers moving on to TV and video, Courtney, Master, Seifert, Zuglin, just to name a few, does it bother Arif he will never make it on TV since the cameras can't point down that far?
I'm 7'3". What's this question about?
Yeah, it's like all pictures of you and I show that you're taller than I am. So I'm like,
yeah, every single one. This is a weird question, Don.
It's just about every single one. Will the 2022 Minnesota Vikings score close to as many points as the 1998 Vikings? More or less points?
No way, right? So there's two factors, or I guess three factors at play here. One is that scoring has increased league-wide since 1998. That would help. So an average team is going to score more points than an average team in 1998. And a high-level team is going to score more, generally speaking, than a high-level team in 1998. The second factor is that there's a 17th game. And so you've got another opportunity, maybe 30 more points that you can add onto the total on top of that. Now, and the third factor, of course, is that the Vikings have a coaching staff that is supposed to be pretty good at scoring points. And, of course, they've got a pretty good roster with Justin Jefferson at receiver, Adam Thielen at receiver, and, I don't know, KJ Osborne at receiver. We're all pretty agreed that that's going to be wide receiver 3. Now, the thing is, if you compare the 17-game total that the Vikings had last year to the 16-game total that they had in 1998, they are 120 points behind. No. The 2022 Vikings are not going to score as much as the 1998 Vikings. And I know Don is mostly asking this as a joke, but no. The team that scored the most points, which again, they had another game, right? So they get 30 free points or something. The team that scored the most points was also behind the 1998 Minnesota Vikings by about 26. So, no. It's not going to happen.
No. For Arif and James's best way for Don's wife to cash in his life insurance policy corner, Now that we've decided on Maui for her 50th birthday, we both agreed to try something different from the last time that we were there on the islands. Cliff diving or hike up a mountain. Either way, I'm terrified of heights.
Oh, yeah, cliff diving, definitely.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the best way.
So what's our goal here? Because I want Don to die. That's why I chose that.
Well, I'm just envisioning that appearing on Twitter. Cliff diving or hiking up a mountain. I think cliff diving seems like the most likely option to involve his death. So yeah, I'm endorsing cliff diving.
Yeah, sure. And then also for a real answer, because we don't want Don to die, we would never say that and not walk it back immediately for fear of legal reprisal. I feel like that's a more unique experience too. It feels like more that you can anchor that memory in your visit to Hawaii, right? So like, I mean, I've hiked up mountains. It rules. I love it. Both times I did it, I was not physically fit enough to do it, but I made it to the top anyway. Just had to relax a lot once I got there. But it rules. I recommend it. There's a lot of places you can do it. I bet doing it in Hawaii would be super rewarding. So I'm not saying it, but I just feel like even though you can also cliff dive in a lot of places, I feel like that experience is unique enough among things that humans do. I think fewer humans have, performed cliff diving than have hiked up a mountain, right?
Well, yes. What if she pushes him into an open volcano?
You think that could be what happens up the mountain? So the thing is, I bet that insurance companies would be suspicious if they can't find the body. And so I think that it would be more difficult, or at least it would take longer for her to cash in on the life insurance policy, because insurance companies also know that this is a vector for murder, especially without a body to perform an investigation on. Whereas with cliff diving, I mean, people die cliff diving. That just happens.
It probably would cut down on the paperwork.
Yeah, which is, I think, going to be your primary concern here.
Yep, clearly. It'll get her back to the charcoal. The gaming nerd has a really important question. Fantastic. Which Nick Cage movie do you think Kirk Cousins watches the most, and which movie would Cousins personally fund a sequel to if given a chance? I know exactly what I would go with on this.
It's definitely not Con Air, because that involves like some serious rule breaking. Can't do that. I want to say National Treasure, but that also involves some pretty serious rule breaking. But it is a little bit more justified, right? Because it involves protecting the reputation or legacy of, what is it, his grandfather, right? Like that's the whole thing, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
It's been too long since I've seen National Treasure, and now I can't look at it.
Okay, I'm just going to make
thinking.
up the plot right now. He, his grandfather made a claim that on the back of the Declaration of Independence was a map to treasure, and he was laughed. All the other historians laughed at him and called him names. His nose glowed so bright that day. But in order to restore his grandfather's reputation, he had to steal the Declaration of Independence. I believe that's the plot. If it's not, don't correct me.
There is a grandfather in the movie, at least, so I can confirm Christopher Plummer is in the movie as
you went to the cast list looking for a grandfather.
Yes,
perfect.
I did.
That's definitely the plot. I don't know about the nose thing. That I might be mixing up stories there, but I that one is more justified. Plus, I think Cousins like mentioned it by name. So there's we had this discussion last time. There is a National Treasure 2, but there's not a 3, right? So he would probably fund a National Treasure 3. Unless that's in the works. I could believe that. Oh, it's in the works.
That's fantastic.
Nicolas Cage confirms National Treasure 3 isn't happening, this breaks our hearts.
Oh,
okay.
That's too bad.
So Cousins could move it along. He could fund the final step of production.
So here's why you're wrong.
Okay.
Kirk Cousins in that press conference where he was the most human he's ever been.
100%.
Where he was talking
not even
about,
close.
Yeah, where he was talking about all these Nick Cage movies. He kept saying the movie Guarding Tess. He said this an uncomfortable amount of times, quite frankly. He said this a ton of times. So my theory is that because he said it so often, this is the movie. This is the movie that stuck with him. Despite the fact that Shirley MacLaine, according to Google, is 88, this is the time to bring it back.
It doesn't have to be Shirley MacLaine, right? It could be like canonically her daughter or something like that.
It could be, technically, but you have Shirley MacLaine out there. She's still alive.
She exists. No, for sure. I agree.
You cannot fake the chemistry that the two of them had. You have to bring both Nick Cage and Shirley MacLaine back for this. I'm sorry.
And to be clear, Nick Cage is a member of the Secret Service in this movie and gets up to some shenanigans because it is a comedy.
Yes. All right. Here is the last question.
Well, that makes sense. Kirk Cousins loves law enforcement.
See? Exactly.
Perfect.
Here's the last question. You're free to skip this one. This gets a little weird. I don't even have a good answer for this. So this one gets my Bill Simmons response. Eldon asks, I have a question for the Arif Hassan Not Safe for Work Side Hustle Corner.
Oh.
We all know Arif, minority owner of the Seahawks, 49ers, Chiefs, and NDSU athletic dean, 4-time Pop Warner football champion, coach of the St. Killian Corn Cobs, and very least, majority owner of the Packers, loves to make a quick buck. While making a risque calendar of the Norse Code Hell League winners, he has to make some phone calls. While James is clearly the December photo, Arif has 3 other big names to place. What other people do you get? The options are Don from Ohio as Justin Tucker, signing with the Vikings, Arif as a buff Blair Walsh, sending his beloved Seahawks to the next round, Dusty in a coffin pretending to fake his own death, and Case Cookus in a Vikings helmet.
So I pick that. Is that 3 that's 4 options. I picked 3 of those 4.
Yes, I assume that has to be it.
Oh, so Case Cookus 1, 2, and 3.
God. These are our listeners, folks. That is going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Again, it's the off season. There's so much non-content out there that we're just embracing it for the next couple episodes. Arif, what do you have to plug?
I've got my Brian Asamoah story coming up. I've got a piece on kind of the state of the roster battles for the Vikings, which of course is not as exciting as it usually is. It's like right guard and quarterback 2 and wide receiver 4 and stuff like that. But that's going to come out. And then I'm going to be doing a live Q&A on Friday.
Well, that's going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Please check us out over at patreon.com/Norse Code in order to enter the wonderful drawing for the fully authenticated signed Laquon Treadwell jersey. Well, we can't say that.
That part's not authenticated.
We don't know that for certain, but it might as well have been.
We strongly suspect, despite the authentication date suggesting very strongly that it's not, that it is a game-worn Laquon Treadwell jersey, and the game that we have pinpointed it to be was Week 2 against the Packers, a historic win for the Vikings franchise.
Thank God. All right, so that's going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. For Arif, my name is James. Thank you guys so much, and please remember that the Vikings are not to be trusted. And we'll be back soon. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog, at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan of The Athletic, and he can be found at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can do so in a few different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get bonus material and more. You can also go to paypal.me/Norse Code for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up some Norse Code merchandise. Any questions or comments that cannot fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this.
All things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci.